Ever wonder what happens when one person's ego controls an entire neighborhood's safety? What if the woman preaching community standards was secretly the one flushing your dreams down the drain? And what if the guy everyone labeled paranoid was the only one who knew the water was coming for us all? I moved to Oak Ridge Meadows, Texas, thinking I'd finally traded combat boots for backyard barbecues. 30 years with the Army Corps of Engineers, building levees in Louisiana, draining flood zones in Missouri, had earned me a quiet slice of suburbia where the biggest drama was supposed to be whose azaleas bloomed first. The HOA welcome packet even bragged about eternal perfection. What they didn't mention was that perfection came with a price tag measured in fines and fake smiles. It started after a light April shower. I stepped outside for the mail and spotted it. A shallow depression in the common park grass, no bigger than a kiddie pool, still holding water like it had a grudge. Most folks would have walked right past. I didn't. I'd seen what happens when water finds a weakness and nobody listens. Pulled out my old measuring wheel, rolled the slope, washed a golf ball. I dropped roll straight into that dip like it was on rails. Soil compaction shifting. Grade failing. Classic pre-subsidence. I knew the signs the way other guys know their wife's mood by the tone of a text. That evening I sat at my kitchen table running numbers on a legal pad, the same way I used to brief generals before monsoon season. The math didn't lie. The old French drain under the park had been paved over years ago during some upgrade, and now runoff had nowhere to go. One more heavy rain, and the whole lower section of the neighborhood would turn into a retention pond nobody asked for. I printed photos, graphs, even a quick drone shot I took the next morning. Then I headed to the monthly HOA meeting with the binder tucked under my arm like a peace offering. The clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee and forced cheer. Folding chairs squeaked under retirees and young moms scrolling phones. Up front sat Barbara Whitmore. Everyone called her Barb, but I quickly learned she was the full Karen package. Perfect blonde helmet hair, pearl earrings that probably cost more than my first car, and a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. She ran the board like it was her personal kingdom. "Order, please," she chirped, tapping her gavel shaped like a tiny pink flamingo. "We'll open the floor for resident concerns." I stood. "Folks, we've got a drainage issue in the park. Soil subsiding. If we don't address the old drain line before the next paving project, we're looking at serious flooding come hurricane season." I passed out copies of my report. Polite nods from a few people. Then Barb leaned forward, that smile never wavering. "Victor, honey," she said, voice dripping Southern syrup, "we all appreciate your enthusiasm from your Army days. But the board consulted real professionals last year. Our new walkway design is going to increase property values 20%. Let's not scare the ladies with talk of dirt problems." A couple of the golf shirt guys chuckled. Someone in the back whispered, "Here we go again with the doom and gloom vet." I kept my face neutral. "Ma'am, I'm not scaring anyone. I'm showing you data. The old drain is blocked. Pave over it, and water will back up straight into the lower homes." Barb tilted her head like I was a cute but confused puppy. "Bless your heart. We'll take it under advisement. Code for sit down and shut up." The meeting moved on to the important stuff, whether the community flag could have a tiny shamrock on St. Patrick's Day. My report stayed on the table. Nobody touched it. 3 days later, my email to the board bounced back. Address no longer valid. Classic. I printed everything again, slid the packet under the office door at midnight like some HOA whistleblower ninja. Still nothing. Meanwhile, that puddle grew. After every sprinkle, the grass turned darker in a perfect oval. Neighbors started noticing too. Susan from 2 streets over mentioned her fence posts tilting. Old Mr. Ramirez said his backyard smelled like swamp after rain. I compiled it all, photos, timestamps, even a simple elevation map, and brought the thicker binder to the next meeting. This time Barb didn't even pretend to care. She barely glanced at my color-coded tabs. "We've reviewed this thoroughly, Victor." The engineering firm assured us everything is stable. Her sidekick Tom, golf tan, Rolex, permanent smirk, leaned in. "You calling the professionals liars, Lang?" The room tittered. I met Barb's eyes. "No. I'm calling for accountability before we all pay for it. She smiled that thin smile. Paranoia doesn't suit our community aesthetic, dear. Perhaps it's time you focused on your own yard. That was the moment I became that guy. The one with the clipboard. Kids pointed. Adults crossed the street with fake waves. Someone left a note on my door. Unauthorized drainage modifications detected. Remove the gravel swale behind your garage or face daily fines. My tiny hidden French drain, completely invisible from the street, had apparently offended the HOA gods. I laughed so hard I almost cried. They were fining me for preventing exactly the disaster they were creating. I didn't argue. I appealed on paper, citing Texas property code and their own bylaws, then went radio silent. While Barb and the board celebrated their paradise paving project, those shiny new walkways, flower beds shaped like hearts, solar lights twinkling like they were mocking physics. I was in my backyard at 2 a.m., digging trenches under moonlight. Installed dual French drains feeding into a 75-gallon dry, well disguised as a rock garden. Buried PVC extensions, added a solar backup pump with water alarms that beeped straight to my phone. Built a low berm along the back fence hidden under fresh sod. Tested it during a light rain. Water vanished like it owed me money. I told my daughter in Austin I was just doing a little landscaping. Never mentioned the HOA war I was quietly winning. Barb, meanwhile, was turning the park into her personal Instagram shrine. Trucks rolled in with pallets of pavers, bags of decorative stone, even a fake fountain shaped like a dolphin. The foreman shrugged when I asked about soil tests. HOA contract, sir. We just lay what they tell us. I watched them seal the last natural swale under 6 inches of concrete and felt that old familiar knot in my stomach. The earth doesn't negotiate with aesthetics. Weeks dragged into summer. The neighborhood threw a block party to celebrate the new oasis. Barb gave a speech about elevating our standards. I stood at the edge sipping lukewarm lemonade, listening to her crow about property values while the ground underneath us quietly plotted revenge. My phone buzzed with the first tropical moisture forecast from the Gulf. I went home, sealed crawlspace vents, stacked sandbags, charged every battery. Across the street, Barb's new walkway gleamed under the streetlights like a runway for disaster. The storm didn't knock politely. It rolled in Thursday morning like it had a personal vendetta. Sky turned the color of wet cement. Rain started light, then hammered those brand new pavers like God was testing Barb's professional design. By noon, the street drains gurgled and choked. Leaves swirled in brown soup. By 2 o'clock, the park looked like a lake with fancy solar lights floating on top like drowned stars. I stood on my porch with coffee in hand, watching my hidden system hum to life. Water flowed exactly where I'd engineered it, straight into the dry well, gone. My yard stayed bone dry. Across the way, Barb's perfect kingdom was turning into her personal nightmare. I saw her through the window pacing, phone glued to her ear, probably screaming at the county while her rose bushes bobbed like corks. The water rose fast, knee-deep in her driveway, then waist-deep in her living room because she'd graded everything wrong for the look. Screams started around 4. Daniel from next block was waist-deep, trying to push his SUV, cursing the pavers that had nowhere for the water to go. Other neighbors waded out carrying kids and dogs, slipping in the current. The park overflowed like a broken dam, sending brown waves straight into the lower houses. I grabbed my flashlight and waded out, not to gloat, but because I still lived here. My pumps were running perfectly. I handed Daniel my spare sump and showed him where to place it. Sandbags on the doors first, I said quietly. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. You warned us. I laughed. I shrugged. Wasn't warning you out of spite. By 6 the power flickered and died. Thunder rolled like freight trains. Barb stood on her porch in designer rain boots that were now useless, shrieking into her phone about lawsuits while her Instagram-worthy fountain shot water sideways like a broken fire hose. The irony was so thick you could taste it. Her beautification project had turned the whole block into one giant retention pond. I almost smiled, but the grief hit harder. I hadn't wanted to be right. Not like this. Morning brought silence and the smell of mud. My house was untouched. Barb's was a wreck, Mudline 3 feet high, shutters hanging crooked, those fancy solar lights scattered like battlefield debris. Neighbors wandered out stunned, carrying ruined furniture. Daniel shook my hand without a word. Susan hugged me and whispered, "Thank you." Nobody smirked this time. 3 days later, White County trucks rolled in. Engineers in orange vests, clipboards already streaked with mud. One of them, Rick Morales, silver stubble, eyes that had seen too many stupid decisions, walked straight to my porch. "Victor Lang." He shook my hand. "We got your anonymous submission to the public database. Drainage analysis, satellite overlays, the works. You nailed it." He led me to the park, now a brown lake. Knelt and pried up cracked concrete. They filled the old main drain with cement. No permit. Class C violation. Water had nowhere to go, so it went into the homes. He glanced toward Barb's house. "County's hitting the HOA with 75 grand minimum. Residents can file claims." Word spread faster than the flood. Barb's resignation email hit inboxes that night. 3 words: "I hereby resign." No apology. The emergency board meeting packed the clubhouse with the smell of mold and regret. Tom read the statement in a shaking voice about acknowledging negligence. The silence was louder than any thunder. They voted to rip up the pavers, restore the soil, and create a new flood prevention role. Offered it to me. I turned it down. "I'll help as a neighbor," I said. Titles don't fix character. Crews came with excavators. First time that bucket pulled up the concrete plug, I felt something loosen inside, like the first crack of sun after a storm. They expanded the drain, planted native grass that actually drank water. The park looked rough, but alive again. Barb's house went on the market with a crooked for sale sign half sunk in mud. A few others followed. But the ones who stayed started talking, really talking, about insurance, soil tests, helping each other instead of policing lawn height. Months later, winter came soft. The park had a new wooden sign, Oak Ridge Basin Green Space. No ceremony, just quiet brush strokes. I stood there one morning with coffee, boots, and damp grass, reading the name someone had painted in my honor. My phone buzzed, text from my daughter, "Proud of you, Dad." It finally felt like home. Not because everything was perfect, but because people had learned to listen to the ground beneath their feet instead of paving over the truth. Funny thing about water, it doesn't care about HOA covenants or perfect smiles. It just finds the weakest point and exposes it. Same with people. Pressure builds, pride seals the drain, and eventually everything floods. But if you stop pretending appearances matter more than reality, you can rebuild stronger. I see it in every blade of grass growing where that concrete used to be. Here's the real lesson I learned the hard way. The loudest voice in the room isn't always right, and the quiet guy with the clipboard might be the only one saving your ass. Next time someone warns you about water or anything, maybe skip the fines and actually listen. Your perfect lawn won't save you when the flood comes, but a little humility just might.